There we go, recording started. So, hello and welcome everybody to volunteer training session number 2, researching updates to the Buildings at Risk Register. So last time we focused on new entries, this time we're focusing on updates. And as I briefly mentioned, this will be a slightly quicker process. We're not starting from scratch with varying amounts of information. We already have an entry onto the risk register and we're just finding an update for the last year, ideally, or potentially a couple of years if somehow they've gotten missed. So another quick refresher. Hello, I'm Amy Popham. I'm Heritage Engagement Manager, and I'm the one that's been contacting you via email about volunteering. I'm your key contact. And if we do get Fred at some point, he may well be a key contact for some of you as well going forward. So I'll introduce you to Fred, my new colleague, who is our new intern at SAVE. Hopefully he'll join us at some point in this session. Great, so we move on. And again, just a little quick refresher about what the Buildings at Risk Register is. SAVE's Buildings at Risk Register, that we often refer to as the BaR, highlights historic buildings that are vacant and whose future is uncertain. Our central aim is to raise awareness of these forgotten buildings and provide a platform to advocate for their retention and reuse. SAVE has been compiling a register of buildings at risk since 1989, and it has been available online for almost 20 years to friends and saviours of SAVE. In 2025, we made access to the register free for all as part of our 50th anniversary celebrations. And you can see in the screenshot here how it looks on our new website. I hope this is familiar to you. I know it is to some of you. But if not, don't worry, we'll come back and have a little look at it again later. And it will become very familiar to you during this update process. Okay, so again, we've got more information on that BaR volunteering role in the induction session that some of you attended couple of weeks ago now, and the recording is available via the link that I sent. I will send a refresher link out soon. This is the second of 3 training sessions, and in today's session we'll be focusing on the second point there, which is researching updates to the BaR. So that's the element of the BaR volunteering role we'll be looking at today. Okay, so what do we mean by updates? So across the year, generally starting in January, but obviously we're in March now, as I was getting everything kind of rejigged and sorted for volunteering in the first couple of months of the year. And then we go right through until December, or hopefully we'll finish them sooner. We'll see how well we do. We research and update every entry to the BaR, including checking on the lost and saved cases, which I will want to do this year. I think we'll probably do that every other year going forward. But that's over 1,500 buildings to check in on across the year. So you can see where I need your help to make sure we can check in on every building on the register and find out what's going on with it. This year, there are a few extra bits to check about each entry as we make sure that all of the information we currently have is correct and deal with any data migration issues that occurred as we moved from the old website to the new website last March. So we want to closely check addresses, map locations, listings, all of those little bits of information to just make sure that they're correct. In addition to this, we're trying to make some improvements to how the BaR is searched, to add kind of extra filters that people might be interested in, and reorganizing the categories of buildings that we currently have in those filters, which are a little bit all over the place. So there's a little bit of extra work in terms of picking a category for each update, but I'll show you how to do that on the spreadsheet that I've created for you all in a moment. The other thing we want to do is to add a search by age feature, so that will also mean picking out from the entry or potentially doing a little bit of extra research if it's not already there to find out how old the building is. Okay, so going into the step-by-step for the task ahead. This year we're changing how volunteers research updates, so even if some of you have done this before, it's going to be a little bit different this year. I'll be providing a bit more guidance, including this session, and asking you to fill in your updates in a spreadsheet format. I hope this will make it much more efficient for both volunteers and SAVE staff to get the updates onto the online register by making it clear what information we need researching and what we already have. So when you're assigned updates, you'll receive the following: a pre-populated spreadsheet which has your assigned updates in. This is the sheet where you'll fill in the updates as you research as well, and the one that you'll send back to me at the end of the process. You'll also receive a guidance document with step-by-step information and we'll cover in this session step-by-steps as well. And it will also include detailed guidance on how to do some of the more difficult or specialised steps, and you'll find that at the bottom of the guide. We'll have a quick look at it in just a moment as well. Okay, so the spreadsheet. I am aware that spreadsheets are not everybody's favourite thing, and I've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. I'm also aware that this was obviously created in Microsoft, and that sometimes it might not translate well if you don't have Microsoft in your system, but I have tested it on a few different options that open in different formats, and it seems to work, so fingers crossed. But just keep me posted if you're finding it difficult to open or work with, or it's changing too many features, and we can come up with an alternative. But hopefully we'll be able to make this work. So again, I'm just going to swap screens a moment, so it's going to take me just a second to change the screen I'm sharing and to show you the spreadsheet. Okay, hopefully you can now all see this pink purple spreadsheet that I've got up on my screen. Somebody just let me know if you can. Take the silence as a yes. So hopefully you can all see this. So this is the spreadsheet. Firstly, I want to say it's quite long. So you'll need to use the sliding bar at the bottom of the spreadsheet to move yourself across and have a look at the different sections. So I know this looks like a lot. I promise it's quicker than the other updates, but it's kind of stepping everything out into easy sections so we don't miss any questions or anything that I want to learn about the new updates on the sheet. So we'll just have a quick talk through this example at the top, and that will give you a bit of an idea of what we're looking for, and I'll just go through step by step as well, and we'll go through a specific example when we're going through. So as you receive this spreadsheet, this is the information that you'll have pre-populated. So this area on either row with all the buildings that you've been assigned for your updates will have the entry name on the buildings at risk register, it will have the address, and it will have the postcode and the local authority. So all those little bits of information will already be there in these first few rows that are highlighted pinky purple at the top. And then all of these white ones that go all the way along, these will be blank, as they are in this second column here, and those will be where you're filling in the information that you get the updates from. I'll just pause to say a quick hello to Fred, although he may have gone again. Fred, if you're here, hello. And I hope this is helpful. So the first column we've got here in E is all about linking to step 1. And that's having a really close look at the BaR entry and checking for any errors that have occurred in it. All of these ones that say step 1 are along the same lines. They're all about having a look at the current entry and the quality of it, looking at the photo, looking at the address, looking at the type of building, all of those things, and making sure we've got the correct information so far. Then what we also have is the next steps. So we've got step 2, step 3, step 4. I think the easiest thing to actually do for this is to go through step by step, and I'll keep flicking back to this and we'll fill it in as we go, instead of me talking through everything twice. But this is the spreadsheet. Some of them have drop downs to choose options from, and we'll come back to that in a moment as we're filling in that section. Okay, flip back to the presentation. Bear with me for a moment whilst we swap over. And hopefully this should go back up. Just loading, there we go. Okay, so that was a little bit about the spreadsheet, and we'll come back to that as we go through step by step. Then the other thing we've got is the guidance. That's the other thing you'll receive in your email when you're doing your updates. This is a long document. Those of you that are in the other sessions would have had a sneak peek for the one for new entries. It's very similar, but it lines out each step as we go through, and it gives you some detailed guidance as well, which you can have a look at. If you get stuck, it's another option, as well as referring back to this video in terms of a little bit of a reminder of what you're doing step by step. Okay, So we've already talked about being familiar with the register, and I know a lot of you have already had a look and know how to look through and search on the Buildings at Risk register. I think this is another thing I'm going to go through very quickly in the tips and tricks session on next week, and I did go through it last session as well, so I don't want to take up too much time doing that today, but we will naturally have a look at it whilst we're looking at stage 1. So the first step in the process, once you've gotten your update spreadsheet, is to have a look at what we have on the register already. This is probably the most important step to ensure that you're not wasting time researching things that we already know, and that we can double check the quality of the entries that we already have, because there are a few things we know have gone wrong over the years, and particularly as we migrated to the new website, like I mentioned earlier. So there is a little bit of a list there of things that we're going to want to check when we're looking up the entry to the register. So the first step is to have a read to see what we already know, check for any spelling, grammar, formatting errors, and you can pop those into the spreadsheet. Check the photo, see if it has a credit to it, what the quality is like. We might want to look for a better one. There might even be ones where the photo is missing, so we'll note that down as well. Are the location details correct? So we'll have a look using Google Maps and check if the postcode takes us to the right place, to the right building. Have we got the right county written down for it? Have we got the right region written down for it? All of those things. Some of them have gotten a little bit jumbled on the system, so it's definitely worth checking. Having a little bit of look of what type of building is it, because for our new categories, we're going to ask you to pick from a drop-down list and choose what type of building category it fits into. And likewise with the age, there'll be a little drop-down list that we'll have a look at in a moment. And if there are any links within the entry, we want to check if they still work. And if they still go to the place we think they're going to, because we have had an instance where it took us somewhere very odd and we were not too pleased, so we need to check all of those links are still valid. So let's have a little go at these first steps. And so I'm going to swap screens again. I'm going to start by, I'm just going to flick back to this spreadsheet for a second. So we're going to be working on this line in the session for Bridgewater Cinema, which is a building that's already on our Buildings at Risk register and is local to me, so that's why I picked on it. And we'll have a little look through all the steps. So the first thing in the spreadsheet that we need to have a look at is for errors in the BaR entry. So we're looking for grammar, spelling, those kind of things, and then we'll need to make a comment on them. So for that, we're going to go to the Buildings at Risk register, and we're going to have a search for Bridgewater Cinema. So you can see that it's come up there in the options as I started searching, so I'm going to click on that to open the entry. Here is the entry for Bridgewater Cinema. Let's pick up the photo so you can have a quick look. We'll have a close look at that in a moment. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm having a read through this entry. I'm not going to have a really good read of it now. I don't expect you to. It's probably quite small on your screen. But the first thing I'll do is have a good read through. And if there are any spelling errors, formatting errors, if there's any double spacing, if sometimes these little asterisks around the update, the little stars are a bit odd, they look wrong, if we've forgotten to put the bold somewhere, any of it looks a little bit odd, then you're going to go back to your spreadsheet and just type in saying, like the example above there, there's a typo in the second paragraph, and then just give the information. From a quick look over that, couldn't see any issues, so you can just say there's no issues or leave it blank. Either way, I will know what you mean. The next step is to have a look at the photo, so we'll go back to that photo. If you have a click on it, have a look at it in this format and think, oh, that actually looks a bit odd. I think that's because it's a very high quality image, so when it's small it looks a bit odd, but you can note that into the form. When you open it up, you can have a look at the photograph. You can see if there's any issues with things. For example, if you can see people's faces, we're not keen on that. If you can see number plates very clearly, we're not keen on that. So those would be issues you'd want to flag. Otherwise, can we see the whole building? Is it a good quality photo? Does it show its current condition, or do we think the condition might have changed from this photograph? You might have to note that later and come back to it. But overall, I'd say this photo is a decent photo. It's not bad. However, where I have noticed a problem is this title at the bottom. And if you click on it, nowhere have we said who the image is credited to. So I don't know if we're 100% certain where this photo's come from and if we have permission to use it. So that is something I'm going to want to write into our spreadsheet for me to check up on. And it might be that we do have permission to use it and the credit is written somewhere else, but it's not visible to the public. So we need to say credit not visible. Or possibly just no. And then you can send that back to me and I'll have a check of it when I get it through. Okay, the next step, we want to have a little look at the location. So we've got the postcode down here. It says it's Somerset Council. And we've got Bridgewater Southwest here. So we can have a check of that using Google Maps. Which we can just open on the browser. I'm going to put in the postcode and see where it takes me. Okay, we've got here. I think we're probably looking pretty good on that, but if you use the corner like we talked about the other day to open the street view, just spin around using your mouse until you find the building. You can see where this might be confusing because I know the area, which is where it might be very useful when you're looking at areas that you know well. I know this is the back of the building that I'm looking for. So if you can't quite find what you're looking for, you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to keep moving around until I see if I can find the building I'm looking for. And it's just that. So there we go. We're relatively happy with the postcode we've gotten there. Now you've had a look at it, I'm not going to close that just yet because we'll need to come back to it later. So address. Then now we're looking at drop-down list. So this is new, and you're going to be wanting to have a little look at the options we've got here and see what it fits into the best. So this is an old cinema. So likely it feels we're going to want to put that under commercial. If you're not sure, just put an answer and I can always double check it, or we can have a discussion about where you think it fits. That's the first level of category. The second level of category is much longer. As you can see, this is really quite a long list. It is alphabetical, so you can scroll down and have a look, but you may also, depending on the system you're using, be able to search into the box. So if you start writing cinema, hopefully it will come up. Or you can look down and find the closest option. Cinema is quite an easy one to find. Hopefully we've got enough categories to cover most things. If you find something that really doesn't fit into a category, there is an option for unsure right at the bottom, or near the bottom because I've alphabetized it. You can always choose that. And if you think there's a new kind of category that we've missed and we need to include, you can let me know as well when you're corresponding via email and we might need to add an extra category. That would be good. Okay, so then the next one is to have a look at the building age. So if we go back to the entry that we already had, we can read through and see if it tells us how old the building is. Here we've got, there we go, 1936, the opening. So conveniently, we've got a good date for this one. And that's not always the case. So you might have to do a little bit more digging. But in this case, we can find the right time. So we've got just 20th century open from 1915 onwards. So we're going to click on 20th century and that will help people from searching in the future. And then the next one we've got, what we want to check based on what we already have on the listing is the grade. This is another thing we want to include to allow people to search by a little bit more effectively. We can see that this one is unlisted. So we can choose that option in the spreadsheet. Unlisted. There we go. If it's not already in the listing, in the entry, sorry, and you're not sure about whether it might be locally listed or in a conservation area, it would be good to have a little bit of a search of that. There's more guidance, detailed guide on how to do that if you want to check that we've got the right information there, which is always a good idea. Then we wanted to check for links, as I mentioned before, so let's have a little look back. There's no links in this entry, but if there was, they would show up blue with a little underline. So we just need to click on those and check they still go to a valid web page and they go to the page that we're expecting them to go to. So that's all we do for links. And in this situation, we will just say no links, or we can leave it blank. Okay, so that is all of step 1 complete. Hopefully feels quite straightforward. It's just about checking the information we currently have in the entry, and look, we've already entered all of those sections. So that's good. And we've got, we're about halfway through by the time we finish step 1, so that's really good. So step 2, I'm just going to hop very quickly back to presentation. Just taking a second. Thank you. Okay, so step 2. Let's try and find the building. We've already started doing this just to check the location, but you may have been having issues with that, so this will help us for those buildings that are a little bit more difficult to find. You may have come across them before if you've been doing updates for us. Some of them, particularly the ones rurally, can be very challenging to locate, particularly where Street View doesn't reach. So we may need to start using Google Earth instead to try and look at those satellite images. You may have to do even more stealthing and try and find the location using Historic England's listing, if they have a listing. Sometimes they can just be very difficult to locate. Hopefully the majority of them will be very straightforward, and if you're ever struggling, all you need to do is just get in touch with me and we can try and find it together. So we're going to want to be looking to check the address, which we've already had a very quick check of, and also this time have a look at building condition as well. So we'll hop back to Google Maps, and we'll also have a little look on Google Earth just to show you what that looks like too. So here we are back on Google Maps, and I'll just show you again how to, once you've done your search, you could search by the name, you could search by the postcode. Generally, the postcode is going to find it, particularly if it's already on the Buildings at Risk register. You might find the name doesn't bring the building up because it might not be used in that function anymore. So maybe not listed on the map that way. So postcode is always a good way to have a little look. And then you can either choose this square down here, which will take you to roughly the building. For us, it took us all the way over here, oddly. Or this little yellow man just next to it. If you pick him up with your mouse by left clicking, then you can drag him to anywhere that's blue on the map. And then it will give you a straight view from there. So we're going to go here, facing the wrong direction, a little bit close. But you can see this is the building, so we can have a little look at the building's condition. Clearly here we've got boarding, so the building looks secure. It looks like it's in bad condition. It's clearly vacant. It's not being used. You can see there's some damage here. And it's looking like it's still standing and it's there, but it's looking a little bit sad. Clearly nothing is currently happening to it. So that's what we've had a little look. We've got a bit of buddleia growing over here. So you're just kind of noting little bits on condition. We don't need to be experts to have an idea that this building is empty and it's not being cared for. So that's good enough to have a look. So once you've made those observations, what's really important is to have a look at the date of these photographs. So you can see that in two places on my screen at the moment. Down here in the bottom hand right corner, you can see it says image capture June 2025. So that's relatively recent within the last year. So that's really useful for us to have as an update to think, okay, most likely in the last year, nothing has been happening in this building, at least until June, it was still unoccupied. And you can see it up again in this corner over here. What is also useful to know, in case For smaller buildings, there's a van in front of the building you want to have a look at the time this photo was taken. You can kind of move around to get into a better position, but it might be that there's a big lorry parked and it's blocking your view. Just to have a look, you can see what other dates they've got photographs for this building. As it happens, the most recent one before 2025, in this case, is 2020, so we're obviously jumping back quite a long way. If you're also just interested in the decline of the building, you can go back and have a look and think, gosh, just 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this building was in use and looking much better. We'll not say it was in perfect condition, but it was at least being used. So it was looking a little bit better. So this section was not being used. So yes, you can go back and have a look, but mostly it's useful just in case there's a van in front and you want to make sure it's the right building you're looking at. For update purposes, the best thing to do is to have a look at the most recent photos that you can find using Google Maps and have a little look at condition. So we've noted on this one, and we'll update this spreadsheet. First thing we can do is say that the images were from 2025, June 2025, so we know straight away when those pictures were taken. And Google that condition. Building is vacant and ordered. It looks to need some attention. Something as simple as that is enough. Perhaps, like you've noted, I have said if we just look on this one above, I've talked about extensive vegetation growth. That might be something to note, particularly if it's much worse than previous or it's already interfering with the building. That can obviously be a great source of concern for the building condition. But yes, a comment on whether it looks vacant or used, or if you can see some work going on or some repairs have been done, or yeah, if it's boarded up, if it's completely unsecured. All of those things are really useful to note in the condition. Just anything you observe, put into this box here. Okay, so that is step 2. When, as I mentioned, when a building is much more difficult to find, I'm going to go through a couple of instances of that in the third session, training session next week, and a few tips and tricks for how we can go about finding those. I'm going to pick a few particularly tricky examples and show you how I work through those issues. So that might be really useful to come along and have a look at. We'll do a little bit more detail about finding difficult buildings then. Okay, so that was step 2. Now step 3, we want to look for recent news stories for the building. This we can do by just searching Google. That would be my first port of call for recent news stories. Typing in something like the name of the building and recent news stories just afterwards, and you can see what comes up. Generally, you'll find local news stories, and they will have the dates quite clearly written on them. If this update has been kept well up to date and you've read back through, some of those older stories will be familiar to you most likely, so you'll probably only need to open ones in the last year or 2 years to have a little read and see what is going on. If you find those stories, then we're looking in the spreadsheet to include the links to the stories and a little bit of high-level detail, as well as the date of the news story, and then that will help us just have a good record of what's being said about the building. It can be really useful for finding out things like recent changes in condition. So if there's been perhaps a fire, if we know it's a magnet for antisocial behaviour, if we know it's a building that maybe the council is looking into taking enforcement action, we can find that out by some local news stories. If there's a campaigning group, essentially it can just give us a really good picture in some cases of things that are going on if there's any attention on the building. Similarly, a complete lack of local news stories also tells us something, and that is that not much is happening, unfortunately, to spotlight on that building. So either way, we can learn something, but add a short summary to the spreadsheet once you've had a little look at news stories. Similarly then with sales information, again, I would suggest a Google search for this. So the name of the building, for sale sometimes, or recent sale, you might want to search. If you can find out if the building has been recently sold or is it currently for sale, in either of those cases, if you can find out a little bit more of information and add it to the spreadsheet, particularly if it's currently for sale, it's great to have the contact details of the agent. We will include them in the building at risk register in case anybody is interested in taking on a building and wants to get in touch with the agent to see a little bit more about the building. And you might be able to find out a little bit about ownership if there has been a change of ownership, particularly if it's gone from public to private or the other way around. That might be something worth noting down if you do find it. Again, with this, similar to the new entries, we're not looking for you to go onto the land registry and find out details of the owner. We're just looking for publicly available information. Sometimes that's easy to find. Sometimes you'll see a mention that says it's privately owned, or a mention that the council owns it somewhere. So that's all we're really looking for in terms of this. And again, you'll pop it into the spreadsheet with any relevant links or details and dates. All really important to record those. Then step 5, again, everybody's probably favourite step and slightly the most complicated one, particularly if you're not familiar with looking at planning portals. So as promised, I'm going to have a look in the planning portal for this building of Cinema in Bridgewater. It's a slightly different system to what I showed in the last session, so we will talk through it step by step. So I'm just going to share my other screen. Okay, hopefully you can see this. So similar to last time, what I would be searching for, Somerset Planning Portal or Somerset Council Planning Portal. If you're not sure which county, although you probably would have come across that in your step-by-steps anyway already, or which local authority, it is in the spreadsheet. Sometimes it can be wrong. You could just search Bridgewater Planning Portal and likely it'll bring you to the right place. So in this case, we'll do the search for Somerset Planning Portal, and most likely the option you'll want will be the first one that comes up. It will say something like view and comment on planning application or planning application search, something like that. We're going to want to click into this. So this we did see in the last session, I believe, as an example. My internet's being very slow. There we go. And often you'll come up with a big page of text that's not immediately clear where you need to go to find the planning information you need. And in fact, that's taking me straight into... No, it hasn't. Okay. I was expecting to see this page first. It's because I was in it earlier testing. That's the problem. Oh, it's not doing it. Okay. Because Somerset is a unitary authority recently formed from 4 district authorities, you normally then have to narrow down and choose the area that you need to be in, which, if you're not familiar with it, will take a little extra Google to check which section it would be in. That's similar across other unitary authorities that are new across the country, so you might come across a level where you just need to double check. Oh, I thought it was Somerset Council, but actually I need to check what the old council area was. In this case, it was Sedgemoor, which we've done here. And then you're scrolling down, trying to find a page where you'll be able to search for planning applications. In this instance, we're going to want this one that says search planning online from 1997 to present day. If you were doing new entries, as an aside, you might want to have a little look at both because it might give you a good bit of history. But in this case, we're just looking for planning permissions in the last couple of years. And really in the last year. So those of you that were in the other session will notice that this is a slightly different format to how we searched previously, but essentially you're doing the same thing. You're doing the same simple search, and often the easiest thing to do is to choose the postcode to enter into the search, but you could try any other of these things. You can put multiple in, and it does kind of risk then one of the things being wrong and it's saying absolutely I'm not pulling anything up. So the best thing to do is probably just to put in the postcode in the same way as you would in the other searches that we've had a look at. So I'm just going to go back to our spreadsheet, copy the postcode, which we've already checked is correct, and then go back to the portal, put the postcode in and choose submit. I could put a date range in if I wanted to limit the searches, and and the entries that come back, but it might be a good idea to have a look. They generally list them in date order anyway, so you can get to a certain point and go, that's probably not relevant for an update anymore. And really, we're looking for things in the last couple of years. And this was from 2020, so it's likely we've already looked at it at some point in the past. It also looks like it hasn't occurred based on the pictures that we've recently seen. So basically this planning search, we can see that it's the right building, it's the cinema, and this date's from 2020. We probably don't need to look into it anymore. So in the spreadsheet, we can record in the planning permission box in step 5, no recent patrons. There we are. If you were hitting no responses found with the postcode, you might want to just double check and try a different route. So you might need to try, Bridgewater Cinema, might try the road name, just to make sure that you're not missing any applications. Sometimes they can be a bit fussy with what they want you to put in. Maybe someone has a slightly different postcode for the building, maybe we haven't got quite the right one. So it's a good idea to double check if you're not coming across the right building, that you are actually looking for all of the options. And again, there's some more tips on that in the detailed guide, and I will cover it again in the session next week. So we'll leave that for now. We'll go back to the presentation. Has anybody got any questions so far? I know that the planning portal can be a little bit tricky. No, great. So this is just loading back up. And we'll be on to step 6. For those of you that were in the other session, hopefully see that this is already moving a lot quicker, a lot quicker than the new entries. Okay, so step 6 is another internet search, and this is for looking for any local campaigners or local groups who are involved in the building, partially because you might find good updates on their website in terms of what's going on, or on their Facebook group page. But it's also really good for us to have those details and chat about the work that local people are doing to fight for buildings. So we will put links and name the groups in the Buildings at Risk register in our updates, particularly if they have links to a good website, or they might be a good source of photographs, those kind of things. So it's really good for us to have a quick check and see if there's any groups. If there have been groups previously listed in the updates, it would be good to have a check-in on those as well and see if anybody, if they're still in existence, and if they keep their website up to date, and check the links to those websites as well. This could be anything from a building preservation trust, it's a pretty organised group that likes to take on sites and do works themselves, to friends of groups who act kind of sometimes as kind of site caretakers or pressure groups to try and get action for buildings, or it could just be some really passionate individuals. You might find this information through the news story search you've already done, but yeah, it can be really good to have a look and see who we've got involved, and then we'd add that to the spreadsheet. So step 7, we have all of the information we're looking for in terms of updating the Buildings at Risk register. And so now it's time to write the update draft. You can have a little look at previous updates to give you an idea, particularly within the same entry, of what we're looking for. And this is really helpful if you can start this process for us. We likely will kind of give it a little bit of a check over before we put it onto the website, but it's so useful for you to have started the process. And as you do it more and more, you'll become much more familiar with Save Style as you're reading more and more of our updates. But do have a refer to the style guide, which again is included in the detailed guidance, and that's really useful for things like how we write grade 2, for example, which was with a lowercase g and then Roman numerals for the numbers. So there's a few little bits like that which are really useful in terms of checking the style guide. So there's a section within the spreadsheet to write this. We generally keep the updates really quite brief, so we're not looking to include lots and lots of detail unless there's a really big planning permission perhaps, but we might then include the link to the planning permission for people to get more details themselves. We generally keep them, pretty short and to the point. And so once you've done that for your entry within the spreadsheet, the last step is optional but very helpful, and that is having a look at photographs. So particularly if you've had a look at the photograph earlier on and noted that there might be something wrong with it. So for example, we were saying that the credit was missing from this particular example. You might want to go and have a look on the internet to see if we can find one that is free to use and a good image of the site. It might also be that you note, actually, the picture that we've got is pretty out of date. It looks a lot better in that picture than it does on Google Maps. So maybe we need to find an up-to-date photograph. If you're nearby and you want to, you can go and have a look. We don't say that you have to do this. And if you do make any of those visits, they're completely at your own risk. And please have a look at the health and safety advice that I keep banging on about, making sure that you stay well away from the buildings and in public spaces so there's no trespassing and no risk of you being hit on the head by something falling off a building. And we also need those photographs to be taken from a public right-of-way or we can't use them. My comms colleagues have actually produced some good top tips for how to take good photos, and I'll be including those within the guidance for you to have a look at as well. So if you do want to take any, let me know and we can talk about the kind of forms we need in terms of permission to use your photographs and what makes a really good photograph. But you can also just search on the internet, like I said, for those free options, which would be on perhaps Geograph or Wikicommons, and I've put those in the guidance as links so you can have a look on those websites. Normally you would search by name of building, or sometimes you can search by postcode, particularly on Geograph, and you can have a look through and see if anybody else has taken any images that we can use under a Creative Commons license. And if you do find them online, include a link. If you're sending them to me, just attach them to the email when you're sending back your spreadsheet, any ones that you've taken yourself. Okay, woo! We've completed an update, and so then it will be on to the next one. Like I said, a much quicker process than the new entries, but we still want to be really nice and thorough. And just the same as the new entries, the first one might take a little while, and then hopefully it'll get faster and faster as you go through and know a little bit more about what you're doing. So just some important things to remember. If you're struggling to find out any of the information, please don't worry, give it your best shot, but if you're drawing a blank, let me know and I can help. You can just leave the spaces you don't know blank and let me know when you're sending the information back to me that you struggle to find a particular thing, and I can have a close look at that. That's not a problem at all. You have the detailed guidance, and you also have this recording, so you can refer back to them if you're getting stuck. And again, the tips and tricks one was going to be really good for detailed guides if you need a little bit of extra help in specific areas. So again, I hope this has been helpful, and you can refer back to it at any point when you need to. So a quick little bit about the next session. Like I said, this is going to be my tips and tricks session, looking more in depth in some of the things we've briefly covered already, such as planning portals, and I will talk a little bit about AI as well. And so to that end, I hope you can help me with a bit of feedback now to let me know what you might like to spend a little bit more time on, or anything I've missed off of the list completely. If you pop into the chat, or you can unmute and say any of your suggestions. But the current topics that I have planned for this next session are talking about AI, how we can use it and why we need to be careful. More details on planning portals, talking through the detailed guidance that I've written on that, and really hoping that you guys can ask any questions that you have and we can go through those together. A bit more on other helpful websites like the Heritage Gateway for historic environment records. That's particularly for the new entries. Historic England's website, Caddy's website, Historic Environment Scotland, and Northern Ireland's Heritage List. So having a look at all of those websites in a bit more detail and how we can navigate them and how they are useful for us. And then, like I mentioned earlier, top tips for finding buildings that are difficult to locate, and where we might have the wrong information for the location. So that'll be just tips and tricks for that. So if there's anything else you think that I'm missing or you're interested in hearing about, please feel free to pop that into the chat or let me know now, or send me an email after the session, and I'll make sure that I include that for the next session. But other than that, that is everything. So along with any of those feedbacks for what you'd like to see in the next session, let me know how this one's been, ask any questions, yeah, pop a message into the chat or raise your hand. And if that's you, Fred, under Lee's login, then perhaps you might want to quickly pop your video on and say hello to everybody. There we are. Hey.
Hello everyone. I'm the new intern at Save, so I'm just picking up on a few of the details I need to know about the risk register.
Thanks, Fred. I thought it'd just be useful for you to say hello, for everybody to see your face as you may be helping everybody out as we go through with some of the volunteering bits. So it's Fred. Thanks, Fred.
No worries. Cheers. Thank you.
Great. So any other questions or suggestions for the tips and tricks session before we go?
Can I just ask about Facebook?
Yes, of course.
I mean, can we take photos off Facebook, or again, do we need to?
I think generally, unless they expressly say that you can do that, I wouldn't.
Okay.
If you need to do it just for an example of to show me the condition or something like that, and you found a picture that you think really nicely illustrates that. Same with kind of Urban Explorer websites. You can find pictures of condition on those ones like 28 Days Later, those kind of things. But we wouldn't normally use those pictures because they've been trespassing generally to get a hold of them. But they can be very useful for us to have a look at condition and the situation. And sometimes we do share the link to them, although I'm kind of wary of doing that again because of that issue of trespass. But for us internally to have a look, it can be really useful. So if you want to share those with me, you can put the links into the spreadsheet, and then I will just not put them any further. But yeah, internally, that's completely fine for us to have a look at them. I just probably wouldn't put them out there without the express permission of the owner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we go? Nope. Perfect. Oh, Karen's typing something. Oh, wait. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend. Thanks. Great. Okay, perfect. In that case, I'll let you all go on time this time. Pleased with that. So thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, speak to you all soon. I'll send the link to the video after the session. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Amy. Bye.